Using the secret knowledge provided by the Dark Lord Sauron, Numenorians devised new engines and built greater ships, growing wealthy through their colonies in Middle-earth, which plundered and enslaved their neighbors, performing ritual sacrifices to honor their god Melkor. Yet their pursuit of material possessions and military power only furthered their corruption and fear of death, and the Dúnedain began to lose the blessings bestowed upon them, suffering from madness, illness, and shorter lifespans. As they interacted with one another, they were increasingly greedy, jealous, angry, and violent, quarreling and killing each other over minor provocations. As the Dark Lord traveled throughout the island, he spread further hatred and stirred up rebellions against the nobility, which in turn caused the lords and king of the island to take cruel revenge upon the people. For years, ar-pharazon ruled as the greatest tyrant since Morgoth in the First Age, though in truth, Sauron ruled from the shadows. Yet despite having everything a man could want, the king's fear of death intensified as he grew older, and ready to prey on this vulnerability, Sauron one day approached him to reveal yet another secret truth. Eager to begin the final stage of his plan, Sauron explained that the Lords of the West lied about the nature of their eternal lives, and that if a being as mighty as ar-pharazon were to conquer the Undying Lands, he would gain immortality and rule the world in place of the Valar. For 9 years, ar-pharazon prepared the Great Armament, planning the invasion of Valinor, and in response, signs were sent to warn them of their folly, like earthquakes, darkened skies, violent winds, torrential rain, hailstorms, and clouds in the shape of eagles, with lightning beneath their wings. Yet in the face of all this, ar-pharazon remained defiant, claiming, "The Lords of the West have plotted against us. They strike first, the next blow shall be ours." When at last the great armament was complete, a final warning fell upon them when the Eagles of Manwë came forth, arrayed as if for battle, with a terrible red sky behind them, shining so bright the Numenorians glowed, as if lit with a flame of great anger. But the king ignored the omen and hardened his heart further, boarding his ship and sailing for war. As all this occurred, the Lord of Andúnië watched from afar, knowing that the king was bringing doom upon them all, and devised his own plan to save their people. Leaving his son Elendil in command, he sailed in secret to the Undying Lands, in hopes of replicating the success of his ancestor Eärendil, who convinced the Valar to save Middle-earth from Morgoth in the First Age. Though he knew it was dangerous to defy the ban of the Valar, he hoped that because his people remained faithful to Eru, he might yet convince them to save Numenor. Following his father's instructions, Elendil then prepared a fleet of ships at the port of Romena and readied the faithful to depart if necessary, taking with them as many island treasures as possible. To explain their actions, they claimed Amandil left to prepare a new home for their people in Middle-earth, and the other faithful were preparing ships to follow. Departing the island with his 3 most loyal servants, the Lord of Andúnië was never heard from again, and while the Valar once answered the call of a man in the First Age and saved the Edain, they would not do so a second time. With Amandil gone, Elendil was called by the king to bring his warriors forth and join the Great Armament, but he refused, and so after the ships departed, Sauron sent his soldiers against the faithful, who retreated to their ships and sailed eastward, waiting to see what was to come. In the year 3319 of the Second Age, ar-pharazon and his mighty fleet arrived in the Undying Lands, finding it haunted by an eerie silence, as the elves who lived along the coast pulled back to a nearby city. Though the king hesitated and wavered, nearly turning back at the last moment, his pride would not allow it, and so he marched into Valinor and declared himself ruler of the continent, before ordering his men to make camp around Tirion. In response to the High Men of Numenor ignoring their warnings, violating the ban, and invading their homeland with weapons of war, Manwë, king of the Valar, called upon their creator, Eru, who unleashed his terrible power, causing Numenor to fall beneath the waves, and the Undying Lands to physically detach itself from the world. As all this occurred, the ships of the Great Armament were swallowed by the sea, while ar-pharazon and his warriors were buried beneath falling hills, trapped within the Forgotten Caves, until the final battle at the end of the world. In later years, when men once again began sailing west, hoping to find the fabled land of Aman, or else the remains of Numenor, they failed to do so, and instead reported that all roads are now bent, meaning their once flat world was now round, and populated with new lands and seas. Yet while the mortal races could no longer travel to the Undying Lands, a hidden, straight road remained, accessible only to the elves, though some humans told stories of great mariners who stumbled upon this secret path and were able to glimpse the shores of Valinor before they died. While Eru reshaped the world, the people of Numenor were destroyed, including their queen, the faithful Mediel, who died trying to escape the waves by climbing Meneltarma, her dying screams lost in the roaring winds. Though Sauron was fearful when he felt the fury of Eru, it soon turned to mirth, laughing at the ruin he brought upon his enemies. When his temple finally collapsed and his body died, the Maya spirit within emerged, still in possession of the One Ring of Power, and made its way to Middle-earth and his home of Mordor. Having lost the ability to take fair form, Sauron made himself a body to inspire fear and started rebuilding his armies to once again conquer Middle-earth. Yet the peoples of the West continued to oppose him, not only the elves, who under King Gil-galad grew mighty during the years of the Dark Lord's absence, but also Elendil, son of Amandil, and his followers the faithful of Numenor, who survived the Doom. Standing aboard their ships as the world changed around them, the faithful saw their island home collapse into the sea before the tempest overtook them. Though it cannot be certain why they were spared, some believe Amandil's voyage to the Undying Lands was not entirely in vain, and for his sake, the Valar protected the faithful from the terrible storms and brought them unharmed to the shores of Middle-earth. With their ships split into two groups, Elendil and his followers sailed into the kingdom of Lindon and were greeted warmly by the Elven King, while Isildur and Anarion arrived at the mouth of the river Anduin. In the north, they established the kingdom of Arnor, populated with settlements like Anúminas, Fornost, Cardolan, and Rhudaur, while in the south, they formed the kingdom of Gondor, with the brother kings ruling from the capital of Osgiliath, though Minas Ithil was the home of Isildur, and Minas Anor was the home of Anarion. Though the scepter of the king was lost when ar-pharazon attacked Valinor, the faithful were able to save the scepter of Andúnie, which was then held by the kings of Arnor, as well as many other Numenorian treasures, like the 7 Palantiri gifted by the elves, stones which allowed the user to see and communicate over great distances, with those of great power able to use them to see almost anything. The faithful also saved the white tree growing from the seedling of Nimloth, and it was planted in Minas Ithil with Isildur and his people. Furious that his Numenorian enemies survived and were prospering in the west, Sauron launched his attack earlier than originally planned, and descended upon Minas Ithil, burning the white tree and forcing Isildur into retreat, though he was once again able to save a seedling before departing to seek reinforcements. The Dark armies also attacked Osgiliath, but Anarion led the defense and held his ground, though it was clear they could not last much longer. Learning of the attacks, King Elendil met with King Gil-galad and formed the Last Alliance of men and elves, gathering the largest army assembled since the War of Wrath to engage Sauron's forces at the Battle of Dagorlad, where it seemed as though all the races and beasts of Middle-earth were represented on both sides, save for the elves, who fought entirely in opposition to the Dark Lord. Fighting for the Last Alliance was King Elendil with the Dunedain of Arnor, the kings Anarion and Isildur with the Dunedain of Gondor, King Gil-galad and Lord Elrond with the Noldor and Sindar elves of Lindon and Imladris, as well as King Amdir and King Orofer with the Silvan elves of Lothlorien and the Woodland Realm. Fighting for the Dark Lord were orcs, trolls, wicked beasts, and men of the east and south, both those who served him in Morgoth in the past, and the Black Numenorians, who now populated the coasts, Dunedain, who were in the colonies and therefore survived the doom of their island. While some of those colonists were faithful, like those in Pelargir, the Black Numenorians of the south were kingsmen and easily won to the side of Sauron. Among these recruits were the men of Umbar, as well as Herumor and Fuinur, who became great lords of the Haradrim. Though few dwarves participated in the war, some served Sauron, while the Longbeards of Durin's folk emerged from their mountain to join the Last Alliance. Though the Battle of Dagorlad was won by the free peoples of Middle-earth, it was a devastating conflict, made worse because the Silvan elves did not feel any particular loyalty to the Sindar and Noldor of the West, and therefore disobeyed orders and attacked prematurely, resulting in the death of King Orofer, while Amdir and half his army were slaughtered in what came to be called the Dead Marshes. Despite winning the battle, the war was not over, and so the Alliance entered Mordor and laid siege to Barad-dûr. For 7 years, the Dark Lord mounted an impressive defense, peppering them with projectiles and raids, resulting in significant casualties, including the death of King Anarion. But in the end, Sauron finally emerged, prepared to face his enemies directly. Answering his challenge, the kings Elendil and Gil-galad fought valiantly and gave their lives to slay the Dark Lord. With all three fallen, Elendil's last surviving son, Isildur, picked up the shards of Narsil, his father's broken sword, and cut the One Ring of Power from Sauron's finger, destroying his physical body. However, Sauron's spirit survived as it was linked to the One Ring, and so both Elrond and Círdan urged Isildur to destroy it in the fires of Mount Doom. But the corruption of the ring and the allure of its power quickly overtook his mind, and Isildur kept it as Wergild for the loss of his father and brother. With the death of Gil-galad, the Noldor kingdoms of Middle-earth were at an end, and so many decided to leave and return to the Undying Lands. Of the elves who remained behind, some lived in the Grey Havens under Círdan, or else Imladris under Elrond, Lothlorien under Amdir's son Amroth, and the Woodland Realm under Orofer's son Thranduil. The Dúnedain lived under Isildur as king of Gondor and Arnor, while Durin's folk returned to Khazad-dûm, and the servants of Sauron scattered into the east and south. Defeated but determined to have his revenge upon the free peoples of Middle-earth, the Dark Lord slowly recovered and made new plans, awaiting the day he might return to full strength by reuniting with the One Ring of Power. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like youtube.com/soulguidemedical, Lord Tarax Zoron, Ty Gillian Fraser, and Fred Heartless, Knight of Iron and Ice. If you'd like to help CivilizationEx, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to see more.